Hi, it's Dre Griggs with Obsidian Wisdom. Welcome to another Retirement Readiness Thursday. I look forward to going through another case study with you today. Today, we're going to focus on a late retiree. So, in this particular case, we're going to focus on Maria. Maria is 60 years old. She wants to retire at 65. She has $200,000 currently set aside. She's doing a lot of things right. She's already paid off a lot of her debt. She's on her way to having her car paid off. That'll be done in the next, I believe it's like 2 years. And then even the mortgage has only 10 years left. And so we're going to see if there's a way for us to be able to help Maria retire at 65. That's what her current goal and dream is. And we'll see what strategies we can put in place that will help. We'll go through a couple of them. Hopefully that makes sense for you. If you end up enjoying this and you end up wanting to learn more, every single Wednesday, we are now doing a worry-free Wednesday. And at any particular point in time, you can join us on those Wednesdays. I'll go through 5 hidden risks to retirement, as well as 3 strategies that will help you make sure that you don't have that problem. So I'm going to go ahead and I will share my screen with you. And then we will get started. Hope everybody's having a fantastic day. Okay. So when you're looking at this, normally what we do is as soon as we put the information in, it gives us a probability, gives us a number. And the reason that ends up being important and it's a little bit different is because a lot of times if you just use a retirement calculator, it's just going to spit out this number that's like, hey, you'll have $1 gazillion. And you'll be like, oh, that's great. I'm good to go. But the reality is it's not a slam dunk, that it's actually very difficult to just say 100% of the time, we know for a fact that we're going to be able to achieve our goal. And because we don't know 100% of the time, it actually makes a little bit more sense to do probabilities. And so that's what we ended up doing with Maria's plan. So what you can see here is we're basically saying, we're basically saying that at 60, we're going to retire, we have our money, and then you can see it starts to go down. The darker line is basically what the number that we're saying. We're saying that we run out of money sometime around 70, what is that? Yeah, the median around like 77 years of age. This particular plan, we're assuming that we're going to actually make it to 90. That's how I like to put the plans together. It just gives us a little bit extra cushion. Naturally, we could make the plan just based on the median age. And that's currently, I believe it's like 77 for a female and it's about 73 for a male. But I do think it makes sense to put a plan together, assuming because fun fact, if there is a couple that makes it to 65, both of them are over 65, there is, I believe it's something like what is that number? It's a high percentage. It escapes me. I just had it and it's gone. It was like, it's a crazy number. It's like, there's a 90% chance that one of you will make it. No, that's the 90. There's like a 50% chance that one of you will make it to 90. That's what it was. I was getting the 9s and the 5s crossed up. There was like a 50% chance that one of the two of you will make it to 90 years old. And because of that, that's why it's like, let's just go ahead and plan for 90. Let's see what happens. So you can see that we end up running out of money around like 77 years of age, and that's the median. It is possible that at this particular time that we could still have $500,000 left, but that would mean every single investment is just gangbusters. We're just killing it across the board. And that's probably not going to work that way. Hey, what's up, man? It's good to see you, my friend. It's good to see you. So we end up having to say, all right, well, if that's going to be a best case scenario, right? Worst case scenario is at 0. What seems to be realistic? Realistic is about 20% probability. Let's go through the case study and we'll see how we got there. So we have a net worth of $105,000. We got a $20K in the bank. We have $180,000 investments. We have the mortgage on the car that's left. That's how we get that $95,000. We move over to the income. We have $80K in income. As far as our savings and investments, currently Maria is putting 20% of her salary inside of a 401k. That is not uncommon when you meet someone because really, when you think about it, we're just not really sure where to put our money, right? Like I find that to be a very common situation where it's like, I'm not exactly sure where to put my money. I know I want to grow it. I know for me, when I first had retired from corporate America and I started my own company, I had the money in my 401k and I was like, I'm going to figure out this whole entrepreneurship thing before I run out of money. And that did not happen. I ran out of money first. And we ended up having to sell a house, move into an apartment. I became a Lyft driver. Like, it was very difficult to figure out that income stream of how I have money coming in without me actively working. And that ended up being basically the main takeaway that I had is like, Dre, you're great. You know, to go to school, you go to college, you get a good job, you work your way up, you get the raises along the way, but you don't have any idea how to make money without you actively working. And spoiler alert, if your plan is to retire, you have to know how to make money without actively working. And so Maria was putting her money inside of her 401k, just the same as what most of us do. And we're going to go over a few approaches, a few strategies that can help her to put her money somewhere else so that way we can be very efficient because we're already 60. We want to retire at 65. So we got to be as efficient as possible. And when it comes to having the retirement income, if all of your income is taxed as ordinary income, which it would be from your 401k, that means that you're going to need more money because Uncle Sam is getting his cut. Now, we're able to have money in a tax free investment, and she does have Roth investments, and she does the max of that. That's currently at $7,000 and then extra $1,000 if you're over 50. And then it was probably good to mention that inside of your 401k, it's actually set up where we had some recent legislation that happened. Long story short, you have the additional catch-up provision that we normally have, which is if I'm over 50, I can add another 7,500. But we have the enhanced catch-up provision for those that are 60 to 63, and Maria is 60. So if her 401k provider offers it, she actually can contribute $11,250 as her catch-up provision. So that would be a pretty cool opportunity and option for her. And so for us, when you're saying, all right, well, this is where my money is at, so I'm investing it. I find that a bare minimum, if you're getting free money, so your 401k is like, hey, I'm going to match you. She has a 4% match. At a minimum, we should be investing that 4%. But at a maximum, the 20% is probably a little bit on the high end when you consider diversifying your income streams. But we'll go over where she could put her money and why I would consider doing it that way. When it comes to her expenses, she currently has her mortgage, and then she has her rest of her monthly expenses. They're about 4,000 a month, so she's somewhere around like 5,500 total. When you look at the cars and the mortgage and everything else, she wants to be able to retire, and when she retires, she wants to have it to drop down. The plan is to have the cars and the house and different things very close to pay it off, and then to see what other options she can have. Because she wants to make it to 65, we didn't have to cover any additional medical expenses. So that was a good thing that we didn't have to consider. And I'm trying to remember. I think that was it. Oh, we didn't go over our goals. I knew it was something I didn't go over. So the goal is to retire at 65. The monthly expenses in retirement, we plan on them being $4,000 a month. The healthcare expenses, we just take what is the national average because we don't know if we're going to stay in Florida. Sometimes when you have a smaller window to retire, and depending on how much money we have, it's sometimes a good idea just to look at moving to a lower cost of living state. Right. So I'm here in Florida, right? Hanging out in Florida. You and I both know that a lot of people from New York moved to Florida. Now, we do have beautiful weather, we have beaches, and we don't have state tax. Like there's a lot of different things that going for you, but it's also a very nice state when you're talking about the cost of living, where someone at an entry level position in New York would be someone at a middle management in Florida, right? Just from a cost of living perspective. And you can find different states where you have that advantage, where if you just move to that state, then you need significantly less as far as the amount of money that you need. And so that might be something that we normally will consider. So that's why I leave it at the national average because we're not sure what state we're going to be living in. And then I did not, based on this plan, I actually did not do anything for the long term care. I simply had it as a reminder. I was like, hey, this is how much the long term care ends up costing us. But we're going to put the plan together, assuming that we're not going to have to worry about that in the early going. And the reason we did that is because we already had a tight window. And so setting aside, $150,000 to cover long-term care would be very difficult at this point in time in the plan. And so we would focus on some of the lower cost items where we're talking about health and we're talking about eating right, we're talking about walking and exercise. I actually was just reading, and because I was working on increasing my VO2 score. For those that don't know, it's how your body absorbs the oxygen and like replenishes itself. And so I was like had a low VO2 score, and I was looking up videos on how to increase it. And there's some really crazy trains out there. But long story short, the studies are like if you can increase your VO2 score, that is a direct correlation to increasing the length of your life and your health. Like, we're talking about like adding 10 years onto your life. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Not the easiest thing to do. Let me tell you, if you end up going down that rabbit hole and you start looking at how to increase your VO2 score, believe me when I tell you that that is a difficult task, a worth it task, but a difficult task. All right. So with that said, then we moved on to the investment. She was actually relatively conservative. So we just said, look, let's just go for a moderate, a very standard 60-40 allocation. We're not going to go for anything more. We're able to work through the risk and her time horizon, and we're able to put that strategy together. For that particular, for us to be able to achieve that, I actually ended up doing what I talk to you guys about all the time, where you have the three bucket strategy. And so that's the one that we ended up doing. Let me change this color. I don't want it to be red. And so we ended up doing the three bucket strategy. And so for those that don't know, the three buckets is your withdrawal strategy. There are several of them, and this is just happens to be one that I like a lot. Let me actually make this a little bit thicker. Okay. All right. So yeah, bucket number one, and that is going to be your cash bucket. So this is normally going to be 1 to 2 years of living expenses in cash or a cash equivalent. So cash, CDs, money market accounts. This gives me a 2 year runway. No matter what my investments are doing, I have at least 2 years to be able to allow my stocks to recover, allow my real estate values to recover, allow my business to recover. Whatever the recession or the environment that we're in, high level, they don't normally last longer than 2 years, right? Like high level. So that gives me 2 years runway, which then allows me, the giving the flexibility to be able to invest in some assets that you normally can't invest in when you're 5 years from retirement. So then our second bucket ends up being our income bucket. Let me make sure that we're doing. So we're looking at your income bucket. We're normally going to be somewhere around like 3 to like 7 years. I mean, it really could be anywhere. And so my income, it could be I'm focusing on dividends. I could be focusing on bonds. So I could have like a bond ladder. You may have your annuities here. And I've even seen those that have a little bit more of a risk appetite where we can have a balance. Oh, I think I was actually in the middle of spelling base. I don't know how I was going to spell base, but no, I was actually looking to spell balance. And so you also could have just a balanced portfolio. And so that would be like a mutual fund. So we're saying like you have a balanced mutual fund. So if you have a balanced mutual fund, we're basically saying that you have 50% in stocks and 50% in bonds. That's what we mean when we say balance. So that is your income. So now what I do is these normally are not going to have that large of those dips and those swings, but I still gave myself 3 years at a minimum to allow them to recover. And then as they're doing well, I will sell these and purchase my cash and my cash equivalents periodically. If the market is doing fine, I will sell these if they're doing fine. And then I will replenish my cash and my cash equivalent. That then still leaves me with my home run bucket. And so this is our growth bucket. This is our aggressive bucket. We're focused on growth. So normally this is going to be anything with eight plus years. And sometimes I'll even say 10 plus years. It really could. It could be any of that. And this gives me 10 years. Well, what normally do we like to have a little bit longer runway because they're a little bit more volatile, but that is where we find the growth. And you're right. So normally this is going to be, right, all your stocks. This is going to be your business ventures. It's going to be your real estate. And it could be your precious metals. All right. So we won't get too crazy in that, but in the long story short, it's your alternative investments. Now, I receive emails all the time. I kid you not, all the time, where people are like, hey, let's have a 15-minute call. I like to go over our numbers with you and see if it's something that you want to present to your clients. And you just need a lot of time. Like that's really the main thing. If you don't have the time to really sit there, go through the numbers and see if the numbers are real, then I would say don't go for alternative investments. That's why most alternative investments, they require you to have a certain amount of money and a certain amount that's saved where you're normally an accredited investor. We won't go into all of that, but that's where that will be. That's my growth because it's going to go up historically over the long term, but there are some dips, and I need to be able to have the time to be able to recover. Where if there is a great recession of 2008, I need to be able to have that growth that we saw. You and I, we both saw it over the next 10 years. We had one of the best bull runs ever. And so I need to be able to have the time to allow those to grow back. And when you have that 10-year runway, so these you can then, whenever they do recover, you sell them and then you replenish your income bucket. And then as that's filled up, you sell that and go here. Now, depending on your risk, we could have any sort of an allocation. You can have this could be 20% of your portfolio, this could be 30% of your portfolio, and then this could be 50%. Now, if you're someone that's a little bit closer to retirement, you might be closer to 30% of your portfolios in growth. And then you probably would still have maybe at least 30% of your portfolio here. And then you have the 40% in cash, right? It really depends on your risk appetite, how close you are to retirement. But this is the idea. This is how we're able to create that strategy for them so that they can be able to do that. Let's see, Rick. Let's see, have a picture covering it. What is that said? Retail 2009. So I would say 200,000 is cutting it close unless you have a pension. No, it's true. It's true. Retired 2019, especially if you just look at the amount of money that we'll be spending, it cuts it very close. And so let's get back to the case study. So I want to be able to show you that. All right, so you see the probability of success, right? It's 28%. So what are some of the things that we are going to be able to look at to change that, to increase likelihood? Normally we want to get over 70, 75, 80%, somewhere over that. Because when we're talking about putting a strategy in place that gets 100%, right? I mean, we're saying 100% of the time, like if healthcare costs go up 10%, if inflation goes up 2%, if Social Security doesn't, pays out less than it's supposed to, the stock market crashes. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios that we're planning for when we're going through these Monte Carlo simulations, which is a very fancy way of saying it runs 1,000 different scenarios, right? Like if you can think back to the Marvel movie with Thanos and Doctor Strange, where he was like, I looked at 13 million scenarios, and he's like, only one of them worked, right? We're not that. We're saying out of 1,000 scenarios, 700 of them worked in your favor. Now, we're all a little different. So sometimes we want to have a higher probability. That's totally fine. But I'm simply saying that if you're able to get 70, 80%, you're normally in a really good spot, because those other 200 scenarios are pretty crazy, right? Like we're talking like crazy stuff is going on. And so I did want to mention that. Okay, so we have a couple of options that we can do. So first, we do normally some simple things. We'll say, all right, well, let's get rid of the debt. Let's see what we can do. Normally, when you're looking at debt, there's really only two main choices to do, and either works fine. They don't normally change a whole lot. It's whatever feels emotionally better for you. One is I pay from the lowest to the highest balance, and then the other one is I pay from the highest to the lowest interest rates. Both of them are going to, even if you don't make any additional payments, it will help you pay off the debt quicker. And so that was the same thing with them. So we're able to shave off 10 months and save $1,100 without increasing the monthly payments at all. And so you could definitely do that, and then it works for you. Now, if you were like, well, what would it look like if I just paid an extra, like $100 a month? Say, sure. So if you were to pay an extra $100 a month, right, it would have you pay it off 3 months earlier. And so if we do nothing, it's paid off in 2031. If we enact this plan, then we can see that we're able to be done in 2030. A very simple approach, not a lot of debt anyways, but that's the type of things that we normally will look at. You decide what makes the most sense for you when it comes to that. Now, so that's how we ended up doing the optimal for that. The spending for almost everyone, it really does end up being the smile. And so we did that. Sometimes I'll do the guardrails, and the guardrails is a very fancy way of saying that I will spend within a certain range. A lot of people don't like the ranges unless you kind of like the numbers. But the idea is if the market is doing really good, you're going to be like, okay, well, that means I can spend a little more this year. But it's going to be within a range. You got the guardrails. So you don't go too much. You don't spend too much extra, even if you made more that year. And then the same as if you start losing some money, you will lower how much you'd spend, but you don't lower it too much to where you're living in austerity, which is just like you're eating ramen noodles every day and you're just sitting in the house, like watching like nothing because you don't have cable or anything like that. And so normally you have the guardrails, which is like, I don't want to spend too much. I don't want to spend too little. I'm going to ebb and flow with the market, but I'm going to give myself a little bit of a spread. And so that normally works only if you're someone that's very comfortable with the numbers and you're okay with that type of approach. For most people, we just go with what your natural spending habit is, which is when I first retire, I'm going to do a lot. I've been waiting and I'm excited. And then I got 2 t-shirts. I enjoyed it. And I'm going to take a little break. And then normally around the end, we have to go to the doctor a little bit more. And so that's how you end up with that smile. So that's where that came from. Social Security, we chose the optimal, and that was 70 for them. And then the allocation RNL, we changed it to moderate. So there's always three levers that we can do to, right. There's always three levers that we can do to be able to try to fix a retirement plan. And so we normally will go through those levers, and I will show you real quick. So normally the three levers that you have is you can retire later, you can spend less, and you can invest more. Those are always going to be the three levers that we look at whenever we have a low probability of retirement success. So in this particular one, we would start looking through the numbers, and I will show you real quick. So we would say, all right, so let's go first with and see what we're saving. So you can see that we're saving 27,200 currently, so that's 34% of their income. So for most people, if you're already at 30% of your income, we can see how you feel about saving even more. But normally, if you're already saving 20 to 30% of your income, then we're probably going to look at one of the other levers. Doesn't mean that we can, because there's definitely, especially the FIRE movement, where you'll save 50% of your check, you'll save 60% of your check. But normally, if you're already over 20%, we normally will start looking at some other options. And so from there, we would say, all right, then what's our second option? So we'd say spend less. And then we would look at the spending, and we would say, well, based on what we're spending, we have already said that we're planning this to be $4,000 every single month in retirement. That's $48,000 a year. And so that again, what happens is saying, yeah, we're basically already living in about the median, slightly below the median in the US. And so we would say, we technically could try to move to a lower cost of living state, or even a lower cost of living country. Right before all the drug cartels, it was very common for Americans to move to Mexico. Very easy to go back and forth through customs, and you have flights that go there effortlessly. And there's some really cool resorts down there. Not as much with the drug cartels, but it's not as common. But people used to be able to do that. You get your pension, or you get your Social Security sent there, and then as you're spending money in Mexico, it actually goes a lot further. You could also look at shifting from a higher cost of living state to a lower cost of living state, at least for you, and then you could decide that. For this one, I think we all are sort of already thinking the same thing. We're 60, we have 200K, we're trying to retire at 65. That it would probably be the lever that we would look at is like, well, what if we just wait a year, or what if we just wait 2 years? And one of the things I like about that is, for a lot of people, you really do underestimate how impactful just working one additional year is. And you can see just one additional year, just retiring 1 year later, increase the probability from below 30% to over 60%, just one additional year. And you're probably like, well, wait a minute, Dre, like, why would that be the situation? And in many ways, it's because there's a lot of benefits from us not retiring. So first and foremost, so the benefits of one more year, right? So we'll do that. Benefits of one more year. So naturally, we are not withdrawing our money. If we are not withdrawing our money, then our money can keep growing. So we have that going for us. Two, we have no Social Security yet, right? As a result, our Social Security can continue to increase, where we get an 8% return on that investment every single year. Your Social Security goes up by 8% each year that you wait. So we're not taking Social Security, so we can keep waiting on that. For most people, you actually will have lower healthcare costs through your employer. For most people, healthcare lower through your employer. Now, is it always that case? No. But a lot of times, if you were to leave work and go to like the Affordable Care Act exchange or something like that, it normally ends up being a little bit more expensive, right? Just generally speaking. I know there's exceptions, generally speaking. And so normally that means that my healthcare expenses are a little bit lower, and I get to keep investing. So as a result, I'm continuing to invest in the fund. So not only am I not taking money out, not only is my Social Security growing, not only do I have my employer healthcare, which is normally going to be a lower cost, but I'm actually still investing in my retirement funds as I keep paying off the bills. And so we have less debt. So when you look at that, you're like, wow, all five of those things are working for you by just adding one additional year. And you're like, well, that, that they used to say like that dog will hunt. And so I don't know what they say anymore. I'll ask my kids what they say, but that's what they used to say. But like that dog will hunt. And so you can see just adding one additional year gives us a higher probability of success. We're still below 70. So then we would just simply look to see what would happen if we waited one more year. So we're just saying 2 years now, 24 months. You can see 2 years, 24 months, right? So we met at 60. We had 200K that was set there. We're 100% sure what we're going to do with all the money. And you can see they went from a 28% chance, which is like, look, you want to retire, you better not live one day over the national average, right? Like where it was a very tight window, to now we're projected to be able to live out to 90 and we'll still have money left over. Then we'll be able to maintain our lifestyle, we'll be out of debt, we'll still be able to enjoy ourselves and do all these amazing things. And so sometimes what we end up thinking is like, oh, I have to retire at this day. Look, I get it. If work is stressing you out on different things, then maybe we would take a look at a part-time job. And then we could do the part-time job a little bit longer, and then we could still retire from the corporate job if it's stressing you out. That's definitely an option that's available. Let's see. What did you say? Charles, I retired for more than 5 years. We know. I love Retire 2019. We can keep track because of your neighbors retired 2019. I'm excited for you, man. You retired right before COVID. I'm glad that you're able to ride that wave and make it through it. I mean, that's a blessing for sure. You draw between 4 to 5% retire. How cool is that? I love that. Now, if you're ready to go and you have the ability to do it, I'm glad you're able to take that leap and it worked out for you. I think that's absolutely incredible. I appreciate you sharing that with us, Retired 2019. So you see, all right, now it depends, right? It definitely depends. Now, if you're someone that's like, look, Dre, is there any other option? Is there any other option? And there is, because we said there's 3 asset classes, right? And so let's go through, for example, if you're in the stock market, that's going to be the one that gives us access to most streams of income, but we don't have the leverage. And what I mean by leverage is you put $100,000 in, and then you get a return based off that $100,000 you put in. But if you go into real estate gives us a little bit of leverage. And you'll be like, well, what do you mean, Dre? I'm glad you asked. So if you took $100,000, I don't know what is happening there. If you take 100K in your real estate, you're not buying a $100,000 home, right? You're buying a home where this is your 20% down payment. And so that technically means, not that you would need to, but that technically means if you took 100,000, you took half of your money, you can get a $500,000 house. And then the high level math, right? The rule of 1% says that I should be able to charge every single month 1% of what my mortgage is, which is $5,000 a month. Now, I don't know. It depends where you're at. Worry about the house, whether that's possible. It'll be more likely that you would take that $100,000 and then you would use that to probably buy, I would say, let's just say that you were able to do 50K. So let's say you put 50K down on one home, you put 50K down on a second home. All right, so it's home number 1. That's home number 2. So if I take my 50K, I know that is 20%. So that means that house is worth 250K. This house is worth 250K. And then if you do the rule of 1%, that means I'm charging $2,500 a month. And I'm charging $2,500 a month. Now, is that exactly how it's going to work? We don't know. But that's why it's just a rule of 1%. It just simply gives us an idea. It's like ratios where I can tell you the probability of success just based off of some numbers. So you'd have 2 rental homes, take $100,000, still have $100,000 left in the fund, and now you're generating $5,000 a month from these 2 properties. Now, naturally, we'd have to cut out the portion that goes towards the mortgage, and so then we would see what you would have left as far as just the money. But if you get the rental properties, then you can spend your paycheck paying off these bills if you continued working. And then you have these two properties that are going to fund your retirement. Then you add Social Security in. Definitely an option and a possibility. The third one is your own personal business. Now you have to enjoy entrepreneurship just a little bit. I am someone who does. I enjoy entrepreneurship. Like, so I would definitely, I lean towards purchasing businesses. I like lean that way, but I do that in the stocks too. So I like small cap companies because it's sort of like that. And some of them are pretty cool. Like they'll send me stuff. Like small caps are really nice. All right. So what I did here is I said, all right, I got 200K. So I need my property to be under $200,000. Check. I'm in Florida. So that's what I said. You can pick any state. And then I'll look through these. And what you'll see, and the main thing I want to show you is, and we're not going to vet any of these. I'm not telling you any of these are good choices. But what we are saying is the ratio changes again, where you have better leverage when you're talking about properties. And why is that? Well, imagine if you have a property that generates $100,000 a year, you would be expecting to sell that not at a 5x multiple like real estate, where, hey, if I'm generating 100,000, then you should pay me 500,000, right? You're not going to buy real estate. You're not going to buy a business for 100,000. You're not going to buy a business for 500,000 that's only generating 100,000 a year. Then maybe it's a 2x multiple where I give you 100,000 and the business makes 50,000. So that's a really good return on your investment. Now we're leveraging our money to where even if I have a smaller amount, I am now able to do something where I'm generating the income. So let's go through a couple of these. This one says $179,000 net a year, work from home domain. Okay, right. It says lucrative domain marketplace. I don't know. That one seems kind of scammy, right? So I wouldn't mess with that. So this one says, probably shouldn't say that. I should say allegedly. Yes. That way you can't sue. You can't sue me if I say allegedly. I've heard that that's the magic word. So what we're saying is that they're saying they cash flow $108,000 a year. They're selling it for $100,000, but they says work from home. You don't have to do anything. The reason that those are normally a red flag for me is if all that was true, why are you selling it? I'm like, why are you selling it? Because if you literally don't have to do anything and it just like mails you money in the bank, why would you ever sell that? And so I assume the business has some work or it's not generating the money, right? One of the two. It can't be doing both. It can't generate money and I literally have to do nothing and you want to sell it because that's what we all want. And so I'll say allegedly again so that way they don't sue me. They got a branded apparel. I wouldn't worry about that one. This is a pull route, so you got to put in a lot of work, but you can see that they are basically selling it for exactly how much it's generating. You put $126,000, your first year is generating $120,000. Look at it. So you'd make your investment back over the first year. Of course, you got to make sure the pull routes and all that other stuff. You'd have to see if the person would consult you, walk you through the lines and see how everybody likes it. There's a lot that goes into transitioning a business so that all the customers don't leave. But this one is definitely a real one because you're putting in the work, right? Like have you ever seen like a pressure washing and lawn service and things like that? Those service-based businesses where people pay you to do things they don't want to do, they normally will keep those relationships as long as you keep doing it. Now, with that said, you probably don't want to clean pools in your retirement. So, you probably wouldn't do that. But I am saying that if you are stressed at your job and we're trying to figure out how to get you out of there, this could be a nice segue. Spend the money, replenish it the first year, and then maybe you can have an apprentice or someone young that can help you out. Who knows? All right. And so this one's an auction one, so don't worry about that one. Toy collectible vending machine. So they're saying cash flow is 54,000, charges you 30. I don't know. Maybe. I mean, vending machines are a little bit like that. So you normally have a route. So it's like you're almost buying in some ways, you're like buying a job where if you ever seen those people that restock the shelves at grocery stores where they put the chips on the aisle or the bread on the aisle, the cookies on the aisle, those people are basically vendors where they pay for the item and then they make the difference. And so I won't go into all the details, but the numbers do work out. It's just whether you want to do that. Whether you want to drive to multiple stores and stuff. All right, and so we can see that there's a whole bunch of different businesses, but I think we made the point. The idea is that I have the ability to leverage my money in a way that allows me to generate the income in a short amount of time so that I'm in a good spot. Really appreciate Chandler. I respect all the hard work. I appreciate that retire 2019. I do. I appreciate you always hanging out with me too. Then I do enjoy that. So those would be your three options. We either go another 2 years, and then we have an 87% chance probability of success. Boom, rock stars, life, rainbows, and Skittles. we could explore increasing how much we're placing in the funds. And so if you wanted to see what that looks like, we would go back to 65, and then we already have 20% of the pre-tax. So I would say let's try to put the money in a taxable investment so we have some capital gains income. And let's just see what adding $15,000 each year would look like. And you see that didn't really change anything. So this one is not going to be, if this one won't be the putting the more money in. I mean, we could try to see what that number would look like how much you would have to put in, but at some point we're almost putting in all the money. Yeah. So we're not going to worry about that one, because that one's not going to save us in our plan. So we won't worry about that. And so we would end up making those decisions. Either one, we make a shift, you buy real estate if you're interested in that, or two, we would look at a business of some kind, or if we don't want to make any other changes, we would just work an additional 1 year or two. If you work 2 years, you got an 87% probability of success. If you just work 1 year extra, it still goes up to over 60%, and then you're in a pretty good spot. And so in this one, that would be the changes that we would ultimately end up making. And so because of the amount of money that we have, we're just trying to get things. We wouldn't do any of those Roth conversions and those different strategies. We would just focus on having the income. So this would be an income strategy. And then we would try to optimize Social Security. When we would always shift it back. So when we're actually focusing on Social Security, we wouldn't have you retiring until 90, because if you retire until 90, then you always make sense to take Social Security at 70, because it normally takes about 11 years, right around 11 years. So you normally need to be like 81 to 82 for it to make sense for you to be able to wait for Social Security. Otherwise, taking it early would be the best option. And I'll put a link to another video or something where I go through how that math is calculated. But if you don't want to see it, it's just, if your healthcare and everything says about 81, 82, then it's an option. But then you have to figure out how do you want to fund your lifestyle after, in between while you're waiting. So for Medicare, we were just going to go with the original Medicare Part A, B, and D. If you were someone that was interested in having like a Medigap plan, that's normally going to be for someone that wants to see the doctor kind of frequently, and they're worried about the copay. So you get a lot of caps in the Medigap plans. And so when you have the caps, you don't have to pay all the extra in those copays. There's no caps in the original plan. And then it's okay as long as you're basically like, I'll spend most of my time kind of at home and around the area, because a lot of these you end up with networks. Now, if you are cool with traveling and stuff, then you just wouldn't have the Medicare Advantage, because that's the one that the benefit of the Medicare Advantage is you have the dental and the vision, but it's within a network. So you got to be sort of around the house and like around the area, just a little bit. I mean, you still travel, but you just got to plan for that just a little bit ahead of time. And then it'll normally work out for you. And so then from there, then we're set, right? So that is how you would, if you were someone that was 60, trying to retire in the next 5 years, the main thing that you would have to do is you got to decide which lever makes the most sense for you to pull. Am I going to retire later? Am I going to spend less? Or am I going to invest more? And then you just do the math to see what makes the most sense for you. The benefits, as we mentioned, of just waiting 1 additional year and why it was so powerful for this particular plan is you're not withdrawing your money. You're not taking Social Security, so that's continuing to grow. Social Security grows at about 8% each year that you're willing to wait. And then you have your lower health care through your employer. It's common. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk always, but it's very common that you have better health coverage, and it's a lower cost through your employer because they're paying half of it. And then you get to keep investing your money. So your money keeps growing and you're still investing that 25%. And I think she was like at 35%. And then you have less debt because we were already paying off the car. We're already paying off the house. So every year that we wait, there's that much less of a house payment. There's that much less of a car payment. In fact, the car would have been paid off by waiting the 2 extra years. So now we don't even need the entire amount. We can still spend it, but we don't need it. And so that's what the plan is for that. All right. So if you enjoyed that and you found value in the video, I invite you to go on over to obsidianwisdom.com. You'll say, I want a worry-free, wealthy retirement. And then I would invite you to join me every single Wednesday. I will do a live workshop, Worry-Free, where we go through 5 hidden risks to a retirement and 3 frameworks that you can use to implement to ensure that you don't have to worry at all about retirement. And as always, I am thankful for your time. I appreciate you all hanging out with me today, and I will see you next week. Until next time, stay safe and enjoy